Good morning, members of Columbus City Council, Council President Ginther. My name is Todd Mills, and I'm a business student at The Ohio State University and an aspiring food entrepreneur here in Columbus. I come before you this morning to address an issue of growing concern in our communities: access to affordable, fresh foods in Columbus neighborhoods, especially those that are comprised of at-risk or lower-income populations. Many neighborhoods are without full-service grocery stores providing nutritious foods, but instead have a preponderance of fast food choices at their doorstep. This limited access to fresh foods impacts food choices in the household and can lead to higher levels of obesity and other diet-related diseases such as diabetes and heart disease in our city. Ohio ranks 12th in the U.S. for childhood obesity and 13th for rates of adult obesity. Among our children, 1 in 6 is obese, and by the time they reach adulthood, 1 in 3 faces a life of limited possibilities because of these preventable diseases. These are statewide averages, and the numbers are even worse in lower-income communities. This growing public health issue will affect the long-term viability of our workforce and our city. Businesses looking to grow and set up shop look to the communities that have taken a proactive stance in support of long-term health and wellness in their city. They pursue opportunities where they can count on a healthy workforce, reducing their health care costs and giving them a competitive edge. While many valiant efforts are underway to educate and activate our communities around healthy food, including community gardens and increased availability of produce at food pantries, only a market-based solution complemented with education can be sustained over the long term. However, entrepreneurs seeking to serve these communities with healthful alternatives are faced with major barriers to success. The traditional grocery store business model requires significant square footage and a portion of high-income shoppers to generate even modest margins. This is a dual challenge that eliminates most of the neighborhoods that need it most. With historic redlining limiting credit options for these communities, the battle has been a steep uphill one for homegrown food entrepreneurs. But social entrepreneurs are innovating new ways to make change and proving that pervasive problems such as these can be confronted using the practices of business. I come before you today to ask that you recognize these efforts and take a stance in support of new businesses, new jobs, and proactive community health solutions. According to the White House Task Force on Childhood Obesity's report to the President, a key recommendation for increasing access to fresh foods is healthy food financing initiatives. Since 2010, federal funds have been flowing into communities to provide subsidized financing to businesses looking to address this challenge. Cities like Hartford, New Orleans, New York, and states like California and Pennsylvania have adopted legislation to enable financial support for entrepreneurs seeking to serve this market. This takes the form of revolving loan funds, subsidized loan programs, and grants to jumpstart entrepreneurial efforts to locate quality food businesses in so-called food deserts. While there are no guarantees in business, this approach relies on citizens to signal their demand and entrepreneurs to respond. I believe that the demand is clear, but that the barriers are too high to overcome for even smart business people. With financial support at the outset, we can jumpstart entrepreneurs wishing to supply these neighborhoods. Entrepreneurs who succeed will adapt and expand to serve more of our city. My request of you today is to coordinate the efforts of Columbus to secure federal support and provide matching funds of $2 million to augment the federal application to the Healthy Food Financing Initiative. The Economic and Community Development Institute, or ECDI, is one of several community development financial institutions here in Columbus that can pursue these dollars. By supporting their request with rainy day funds, you will help raise the status of Columbus in the eyes of the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. This opportunity is within reach. An ECDI program already exists to administer these funds, and an expanded request can help this city emerge as a national leader. Applications are due mid-December. These funds will not disappear in a one-time dispersal. They will be loaned to social entrepreneurs who are willing to take risks on behalf of this city. They will be repaid and loaned again as the community takes its health into its own hands. As Columbus is by all accounts a city on the rise, I believe we owe it to our future to address this problem now and take a leadership role in transforming this issue from a growing health crisis into an opportunity to claim the national stage and work together for market-based solutions. Thank you.
Good morning, Clark County Commissioners. My name is Sam Wildman. I'm an undergraduate studying agriculture communication at The Ohio State University. I'm here today to shed light on an issue that our county, which has a long-standing history in agriculture, is slowly starting to face. According to the 2007 Census on Agriculture from the United States Department of Agriculture, Clark County, Ohio has 744 active farms. That number has decreased slightly from the previous census, which reported 756 farms. On top of all that, the census shows that the average age of farmers has remained steady at 54 years of age. The census also shows a decline of 10% nationally in new farmers over the past 30 years. These numbers are not critical as of right now, but they are indefinite foreshadowing of what is to come if we do not proactively work to preserve our farmland. What we are currently seeing in Clark County is that existing farmers, or already established over 10 years, are buying up farms that are becoming available, which doesn't give people who want to farm but don't have land the opportunity. Other farmland ends up in residential or commercial industries in order to make profit off the sale. Stakeholder groups that are concerned are family farmers in the county, agricultural landowners who are not farming, and low equity farmers who are new and farming less than 10 years, still establishing themselves. Many already have or should have concerns for this problem if action is not taken to preserve farmland. I propose developing a farming entrance program called a Farm Link. This program could be used to connect people who are looking to produce or farm with folks who own land but are looking to rent or sell. This link program would include meetings between them, getting them to establish a relationship, as well as incorporating educational programs about ways to farm, different farm financing options, how to handle rental agreements, crop insurance options, various marketing solutions, and farm and food safety. This program would be available to anyone who applied and met the simple criteria, either not farming but looking to farm, or currently owning land but looking to rent or sell. Many other counties or regions have implemented different strategies that are similar and different. Some of those strategies include conservation easement purchase programs. Those purchases then guarantee agriculture on the land, or tax-exempt bonds for low equity farmers. A recent study by James Williamson and Annie Kachova recently showed that low equity farmers and the Aggie bonds haven't really helped them become full-time landowners because of some of the rates involved in that stuff. I believe the FarmLink program is a feasible solution because farmers are being helped both on the entering and exiting phase of their job. The FarmLink program can provide the tools that farmers need and help the outgoing landowner get the peace of mind that things are being handled in a positive way. Conservation easements can be met with some resistance from farmers who might feel that they lose a part of the integrity of their farm by limiting their options as far as enterprise. The FarmLink program provides a win-win for both sides. The biggest downside to it is that the farmers in the program have to be eligible and be looking for those things. When we look at the cost of the program, the largest cost associated with this type of program is a startup and then salary to pay 1 or 2 people to run the program, look at the applications and then process them and meet those people, and then also seminars or conferences for those educational purposes to future their careers. While the statistics do not show an urgent rush to action in order to preserve farmland, they absolutely show why it is important to plan ahead. I ask that you consider the program as a way of developing future plans to preserve our farmland in the county, and thus both the heritage and cooperation of agriculture in the future. Thank you.
Good morning, County Commissioners of Fairfield, Licking, and Perry Counties. My name is Mary White, and today I represent the organization Buckeye Lake for Tomorrow. And I will be talking about algal blooms on Buckeye Lake correcting unsustainable agricultural practices. According to Jennifer Clapp, the spread of industrial agriculture model has resulted in extensive negative ecological effects. Land has been poisoned by chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Water has become more scarce, and the list goes on. So the current issues that we're facing at Buckeye Lake are that we have blue-green algae blooms, and when they've done tests on the waters, they've found that there are liver toxins that can harm humans, cause them to become sick, and then they can also kill pets. So this is the third straight year that park officials have had to post advisory signs, and they advise that those who are very young, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems not swim in the waters. The reason why this is happening is because we're having excess phosphorus that's running into the streams and then into the lakes, and this is due to manure, sewage, and fertilizers. So the stakeholders for this issue are all the citizens of Ohio, particularly those who use the waters recreationally, and then different government agencies such as the EPA, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Division of State Parks, as well as elected officials at all levels of government, and then landowners and farmers along the affected waters, as well as environmental organizations. So what can be done to fix this problem? Other watersheds who face similar issues have tried quick fixes such as algicides, but the problem with that is that it can increase the toxicity of the water, and it also has been proven to kill organisms other than the blue-green algae, so it's not really broadly recommended. What has been shown to be most effective as a long-term solution are broad community-based education efforts. So the EPA has spent about $700,000 since 2011 to address the problems at Buckeye Lake, and part of this funding has gone to a study to try to map the major farm drainage outlets along the streams that feed into the lake. So we propose that we build on the EPA study and target farmers who are contributing most to those farm drainage outlets and promote a soil and water conservation district program called the Agriculture Pollution Abatement Program. And essentially, this program works to with different farm owners to develop and implement best management practices to protect the waters of Ohio. And this program has shown to be effective in reducing concerns associated with manure runoff and also soil erosion. And then as the second piece to this, we propose that the county work with the soil and water conservation districts to apply for grant funding for a program called the Nutrient Reduction Outreach Grant Program. So what would be needed are staff hours from the Soil and Water Conservation District offices to help promote the Agriculture Pollution Abatement Program, and then also the formation of a cooperative committee between the county governments and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts to write for and implement a grant proposal. And examples of proposals that have been funded in the past include public events that promote proper nutrient management, as well as producer education and nutrient application certification workshops. So in terms of feasibility, both of these programs are currently in place, so they're financially, politically, and technically feasible. They would just require a little bit more personnel time from the county. And in terms of the main critique of this approach is that it's long-term, so it takes a long time to actually see the results. And it requires a lot of community engagement and participation. So if you had individual landowners who were opposed to this approach, it could create major roadblocks.
Good morning, Mayor Coleman, the Green Team Advisory Board, and the Director of Public Service. My name is Maria Deri, and I'm an MPA student with the John Glenn School of Public Affairs. Today, I want to talk to you about food waste. Now, simply put, food waste consists of the edible elements that we discard. The reason that this is a problem, food waste occurs at every stage in the food system, but I want to focus on what we can do as eaters and Columbus residents to solve an issue. Food waste takes up valuable real estate in the landfill. Not only is it in there, it is also creating greenhouse gas. Food waste is responsible for 25% of the overall methane emissions for the US. 25%. This is an easily resolved issue. We can look at the environmental impact and how are you going to put a dollar on that. However, if we look at individual households, for a family of 4 per year, this can be $1,300 to $2,300 that you might as well just throw away into the landfill. This is food that could be eaten and could be used, but we're just letting it take up valuable real estate. Now, when it comes to the stakeholders, if you eat, if you're a business, if you generate waste, this is your problem. This is our problem. So we can also look at just as a city, it's costly for us to be dumping trash into a landfill. We know that it's not the best use of space, and as we continue to expand and we support, sustainable green initiatives, we're not going to want a city filled with landfills. That's not going to be ideal. So if we can reduce the amount of food waste that's in the landfill and then use that space for more lucrative or housing kind of purposes, this would be ideal. Food waste prevents us from achieving a green Columbus. So that's why I propose the Compost Columbus initiative. So my solution is to basically collect citywide composting just as we do trash and recycling. Now, this is a great time to implement the Compost Columbus initiative because we finished rolling out the 5-stage Recycolumbus that everybody probably knows about with the curbside recycling. So that finished in February of this year. This is the next logical step. Now, certainly there are going to be some educational barriers. I'm sure there are some people that may not know what composting is. They don't know that you can turn your garbage into gold. But this is something that we can very easily resolve with some educational seminars. It's not anything new. This is something that we do as a city when we have any sort of new policy or program that we want to roll out. Now, one issue though is the cost. It's going to be expensive up front. If we're going to give out the compost bins initially to all of these curbsides, we have between around 230,000 curbs, I guess, that we service. So you've got the cost of the bins, we also have the cost of labor, and we also have to figure out where are we going to put the compost? What are we going to do with it then? Are we going to use it for farms? Are we going to use it for local initiatives? These are things that we have to figure out, but they are easily resolved. Now, with the cost of labor, we can look at that more positively and say, this is the development of jobs. And with our green initiatives, we are trying to support more sustainable business initiatives, and this is one great way to do it. So, all problems that we can easily combat. Now, in comparison, San Francisco has a goal of 0 waste by 2020, and our little goal is just to divert 25% of waste by 2016. I think we're aiming too small. We can do more. We can directly engage residents. Now, we already have educational brochures. We have lots of references online. You can create tax incentives for businesses. The reason that I chose this solution is because what we're doing is we are making people conscious every single day of the waste that they create. It's a habit to throw your trash out, take it out to the curb, so this is just one more thing. We have 3 different bins. It'll just be a matter of telling people what to put where, and that's not a problem. So, in closing, I just want to say thank you for your time, and please, Green Team, Mayor Coleman, I want you to consider Compost Columbus in the upcoming budget. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Jack Everson of the City of Chillicothe, and to the Chillicothe City Council members, and to the Ross County Commissioners. My name is Josh Roth, and I'm an MPA student at The Ohio State University, and I'm also a graduate intern at the Office of Community Development at the Ohio Development Services Agency. The Office of Community Development administers Ohio State's Small Cities Community Development Block Grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I'm going to be discussing a variety of the programs that we offer that can be used to address food system problems. According to the USDA's Food Access Research Atlas, the northeastern census tracts of the city of Chillicothe and then a majority of the southern portion of Ross County have food accessibility issues that have been identified at both the 1 urban mile and 10 rural mile thresholds. Additionally, much of Chillicothe and Ross County also qualify as low-income areas and have vehicle accessibility problems. It is my belief that limited access to high-quality, safe, and nutritious foods is an issue of military readiness, of economic productivity, and also, most importantly, a quality of life issue. The primary stakeholders affected by this problem are the residents of Chillicothe and Ross counties, but also the neighboring counties that have food accessibility issues, which include Highland, Jackson, Vinton, and Pike. Other stakeholders include the regional employers who rely on these residents for their employers or for their labor force, and then also the state of Ohio, which has an interest in keeping the state as competitive as possible. I propose that the elected officials of Ross County and Chillicothe collaborate to develop a community food plan to address the local food access of their residents, and then to later implement this plan as best possible given the resources and constraints. Some of the examples of action items that this plan might include would be establishing farmers markets, community gardens, revising zoning regulations to allow for additional community gardens, distributing information to connect producers and consumers of the local food market, and then to provide educational opportunities to promote and support local food enterprises. The city and the county have resources available to them through Ohio's Small Cities CDBG program. As you know, Chillicothe received $75,000 and Ross County received $125,000 in fiscal year 2013 from OCD's annual allocation program. And this program allows for $15,000 from each community to be spent on the development of a qualifying plan, and a community food plan is an eligible expense. And each jurisdiction also has the ability to apply for a competitive neighborhood revitalization plan or grant, which is worth up to $300,000 that can be used to implement the action items that I mentioned, as long as they're framed appropriately to meet the national objectives of HUD. There is going to be some additional administrative burden associated with preparing and applying for an NRG, but we do allow for 10% of the award to go towards administrative costs, which kind of offsets the burden of that a little. And I'm not sure that improving food access is a politically difficult thing to campaign on, but diverting some of your allocation funds from more feasible or more desired infrastructure projects to a food accessibility project is likely to be a little difficult. A critique of this plan is that those that live in rural areas and small villages often may not use community gardens enough to justify their creation. But some literature from various extension offices claims that rural community gardens and farmers markets can be used successfully if they provide secondary benefits like agricultural education. So we can't assume that these efforts are going to be successful in rural counties, but the public hearing process will prove useful in assessing the feasibility of those. And in conclusion, I ask that the elected officials of the city and of the county develop a community food plan using a state fiscal year 2014 grant, and if there is enough demand identified in that planning process to apply for a neighborhood revitalization grant, to implement some of the action items I identified.
Good morning to the Wellness Initiative Planning Team for the Columbus City School District and Joe Brown, Director of Columbus City School Food Services. The issue that my proposal seeks to address is the City School District Food Service Program deficit. Last year alone, the program lost $1.75 million. To cut costs for the food service program, cafeterias offer students foods that are cheap to produce and cheap to process, and they're rarely offered fresh fruits or fresh vegetables. The food service program continues to lose millions of dollars each year, and students don't have access to healthy, fresh, or sustaining meals. Stakeholders on this issue include students and parents of students attending any public Columbus City elementary school. Engaging students in food choices and development of healthy diets in schools is critical for shaping behaviors and attitudes towards food, for reducing obesity rates, and for fostering youth engagement in our global food system. The school district and taxpayers should pay particular attention to this issue because currently the inefficient program is operating at a $2 million deficit each year, and the program is costly to schools, the students and their families, and ultimately to taxpayers. The policy that I suggest for the school district is an application to the USDA Community Eligibility Option. This will be available to school districts in Ohio beginning next school year. The Community Eligibility Option is a federal program that is currently available to 11 different states. And here's what the option does. It requires that participating schools serve all students lunches and breakfasts at no cost to the school, no cost to the students, theoretically increasing the school student participation rates to 100%. The program will then reimburse the schools for 90% of the total cost, with the school only paying for 10% of the total costs. Joe Brown, the director of Columbus City School Food Services, has stated that the main reason for high costs in the lunch program is low participation rates. As of last year, only 71% of Columbus City school students participate in the lunch program, and 80% qualify for free or reduced lunches. It's obvious from this data that even students who qualify for free or reduced lunch prices aren't participating in the program. This could be because families don't know about the option, they don't know exactly how to apply for the option, or they just choose not to because of social pressures. Increasing the participation rate to 100% is necessary to take advantage of economies of scale. By increasing the amount of students participating in the school breakfast and lunch programs, the district is able to buy much larger quantities of food for the students at reduced prices per meal. But the goal of this policy proposal is not only to reduce costs for the school district, but to increase participation as a means to purchasing healthier foods for the school districts. The school can significantly reduce costs through the community eligibility option and use these savings to invest in programs that increase healthy food consumption, such as the introduction of salad bars into cafeterias. This program is a feasible option for the Columbus City School District because to be eligible for the program, the district has to have a 40% qualification rate, and currently Columbus has an 80% qualification rate. Other options that were considered include funding from other federal programs and private foundations such as Robert Wood Johnson or Children's Hunger Alliance. Private grants are often used to help with covering high costs for these types of programs, and the main reason for the high program cost is low participation rates, which the community eligibility option seeks to address directly. Other federal programs such as the Let's Move Salad Bars into Schools campaign seeks to bring healthier options into school cafeterias, but very few schools in Ohio have actually been successful with this because it requires such extensive private donations. One main issue that arises with this request is that the program will definitely reduce costs to the district, but not necessarily will the district reinvest this money into healthy food consumption options for students. This is why my proposal includes two essential parts: increasing participation through this community eligibility option, and then development of a food service team that seeks out healthy food alternative purchasing options that are now cheaper because larger quantities are being purchased by the district. My specific request to the Columbus City School District and their Wellness Initiative Planning Team is that the district apply for this community eligibility option this April. The program will allow for the school district to reduce its annual losses through increasing student participation rates. It's critical that the money saved through this program be invested in a plan designed to increase consumption of healthy foods such as fresh produce and fresh vegetables, because we don't want to be increasing participation rates to 100% if it just means increasing consumption of unhealthy foods. So with less cost to the school district, individual schools can invest in cafeteria infrastructure, purchases of nutritional and maybe even local foods, and experiential learning programs that get kids excited about eating healthy foods.
student of the City and Regional Planning at the Architecture School of OSU. And, sorry. I am speaking on behalf of the zoning and planning officials of Columbus, Ohio. And my problem that I want to address is food access in lower income families, residential areas. Low income families are affected by poor food access more so than families in better areas. Planners and the people that live in these communities are the ones that should care about this problem because it's close to home to them, and it's really difficult for people in low-income areas to get healthy food access because they don't have the resources available, such as farmers markets or farm stands. And I think a good solution to this problem is zoning through planning, and zoning regulations allow community gardens and farmer markets and pop-up shops on like vacant lots, and it's worked a lot in other communities. Cleveland has taken this approach on a lot in a lot of their counties, so it's definitely feasible, and it's also feasible because it's low income or it's low cost, and it's a pretty easy change. Zoning ordinance can be also bad though because they can change quickly depending on attitudes of the community or depending on a political shift in leadership. Allowing more zoning for food access can really help communities, and it's an easy, quick change. So I think planners should start to get more into the food system and try to allow more zoning for food and agriculture to help low-income families.
Good morning, City Council members. I'm Elizabeth Robison, a second-year PhD student in the agricultural economics field at The Ohio State University. Eating outside of the home is now a $500 billion business a year in the United States. It accounts for 46% of the average household food budget and 32% of the average household caloric intake. Studies have linked this increase in eating outside of the home to health problems such as obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Part of this problem is caused by an information problem, which is a basic type of market failure. While grocery stores and other food outlets are required to include nutrition information on all of their products, restaurants are exempt from this. Studies have shown that people who do not have access to nutritional information tend to create their own perception of the nutrition. In doing so, the perception is generally wrong, and people will often then make an incorrect decision based on an incorrect perception. This problem impacts all citizens of Columbus because it creates suboptimal decision based on both taste and incorrect perception. It also causes a negative externality by clogging up the healthcare system with unnecessary diet-related problems. I propose that the City of Columbus should enact a policy that requires all restaurants to include calorie and fat content on all restaurant menu items. Studies suggest that this creates a 20 to 30% switch in restaurant choices. And for those who don't switch, it may impact food choices later in the day. For example, people who choose an unhealthy lunch may then choose a healthier snack later in the day. It also would inspire restaurants to change menu items to increase their health. Although further studies are needed to fully understand the impacts a policy like this would have. California, Philadelphia, Seattle, and New York have all required that chain restaurants include calorie content on the menu items. However, chain restaurants are not the only problem, and calories are not the only nutrition information that goes into a nutrition decision. Alternatives to this policy include a sin tax on low quality or low nutrition food, or banning of certain types of food, such as New York City's ban on large sodas. People tend not to like this policy because it inhibits freedom, and it doesn't correct for the information problem, so people still have wrong perceptions and have to pay taxes on them. This policy would be relatively easy to enact. It would only take a few minutes on a website such as nutritiondata.com to figure out the nutrition information for each menu item. To make it easier on restaurants, we could exclude specials and allow leeway for menu changes And for restaurants that are using seasonal products, we could allow them to provide ranges, so that way they could have different vegetables each night and they don't have to recalculate the menu each time. They could just present a range, because this policy is not aimed at prohibiting restaurants' abilities to operate. The real cost of this program would be an enforcement mechanism. It might take a few hours of staff time each week to just spot check a few restaurants and make sure that people aren't lying about the nutrition information. The downside to this is that it may put a disproportional cost on non-chain restaurants, as chain restaurants can calculate nutrition content for all the restaurants at once, whereas non-chain restaurants would have to take individual time. And it might have a lower impact than a tax or a ban. However, that would depend on the level of tax we set and what we're banning. So in conclusion, I would like to ask the City Council of Columbus to enact a policy to help correct for the information problem by including fat content and calories on restaurant menu items. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Columbus City Council. My name is Michael Salvadore. I'm a graduate student at The Ohio State University in the John Glenn School of Public Affairs and Commissioner John O'Grady's policy aide. I'm here before you today on behalf of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners to urge you to pass a local food sustainability resolution. A month ago, the Franklin County Commissioners, in conjunction with the Franklin County Local Food Policy Council, passed a food sustainability resolution that states that the county will essentially keep in mind the local food system of Central Ohio when making policy decisions. These policy decisions range anywhere from procurement for the various foods that the county directly sells, like in the cafeteria and in various county facilities, to urging other local governments to adopt similar resolutions. The Franklin County Board of Commissioners takes pride in that this is a cutting-edge resolution and has only been adopted in a few other municipalities throughout the country, including San Francisco and Dane County, Wisconsin. What this resolution essentially does is it allows the county greater flexibility to intervene in the local food system and provide it some help. So when the county looks at zoning regulations, for instance, in the Franklinton area or East Columbus, or looks to cooperative purchasing with other municipalities in our jurisdiction, it gives the county the flexibility to work with local food groups, to work with providers, to work with all the different stakeholders in the food system in order to strengthen the local food economy. So we are urging this morning the Columbus City Council to adopt a similar resolution. And as the city, you will have specific powers that the county does not have. For example, you'll be able to work directly with local farmers to provide them economic development funding assistance through your CDBG grants. You'll be able to work with distributors to build food processing facilities. For example, the new proposed facility from the Godwin Guild of Wildman Park. And you'll be able to work directly with retailers, wholesalers, and consumers to provide local food options and redo some of the zoning codes so you're able to, like a previous presenter this morning had said, to zone healthy food access options instead of fast food options. So the ask this morning is to basically, if you'd like, carbon copy our resolution and pass it as your own, pass it as the ordinance. And that this will not only show that Franklin County and Columbus are working side by side to strengthen the local food economy, it will also give us greater leverage to partner together on projects, as I mentioned before, the Wildman Park proposed food distribution center, and will allow us to work jointly to provide funding, to provide technical support, and to make a statement to all the various stakeholders in the Franklin County community, from nonprofit organizations to organizations that work directly with the food system, like the Local Food Policy Council, Local Matters, and others, and work directly with potential businesses, with the business sector, and with other communities to really support and strengthen the local food system here in Central Ohio. So with that, I'll yield some of my time for some questions.
Hamilton County Commissioners, I am here today as a environmental specialist from Ohio State University Extension and talking about the loss of community identity in the Cincinnati area. The problem is that the meat industry is losing jobs. One small slaughterhouse is threatening to close, losing 100 jobs in the county. and why is this happening? Why are these slaughterhouses closing? In this particular case, they were cited by Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and told to abandon their old permitted waste system. The waste from the slaughterhouse was going to old ponds and creating odor problems in the area, and the option that was presented to them was to connect to the city. Unfortunately, connecting to the city wastewater treatment plant is not simple. They would have to annex into the city because the slaughterhouse is out in the county outside of the city. They'd have to pay for a sewer extension pretreatment, and the surcharges alone at close to $10 per 1,000 gallons exceeds the income of the plant. So the plant would have to close because they could not afford the estimated $12.5 million 20-year costs to treat their wastewater at the city. Fortunately, the Ohio State University has developed a new technology, and this research uses an on-site treatment system called a sand bioreactor. The cost of using a sand bioreactor is only $3.90 per 1,000 gallons, creating significant savings for the industry. The other big advantage to using a sand bioreactor is its exceptional effluent quality, which exceeds the quality of the wastewater discharge from the city treatment plant. So what are the problems with losing the meat industry in the Cincinnati area? Well, it's losing the community legacy. And just recently, the large con plant closed, losing jobs and losing the identity of the city. Think about a city like Milwaukee. When you think of Milwaukee, what do you think of? Beer, right? Well, in Milwaukee, they're losing their big breweries. The Pabst Brewery is already closed, but what's taking its place? The small craft breweries are taking over, and now in Milwaukee there are over 25 craft breweries. Well, what about craft meat in Cincinnati? There are over 20 meat processors have been identified in the greater Cincinnati area. Perhaps the county could create a better home and foster this craft meat industry to restore its identity. So, number one, reestablishing the identity of Cincinnati area as a center for meat. This would mean building a new, more modern image for meat processing, not the old image that the city has in its history. It could do this by promoting local meat, that local meat processors could be encouraged to move into the area because they can use new low-cost on-site wastewater treatment systems that aren't being used in other parts of the state. But the issues that they might face with this is that they would need to have support from Ohio EPA. Ohio EPA has given support to one industry in your county already. And you might also have pushback from the sewer district, who is used to getting those high surcharges and expects those to continue. Also, you could promote the local meat processing industry through an environmental development matching fund, and that could support planning and permits. You would need only modest funding for this. An example is a current grant project going on in Hamilton County through Duke Energy, which is revitalizing small businesses. So by promoting local meat and craft meat, you can do both. You can have jobs, you can have local food, and you can have a clean environment and restore the legacy of Cincinnati. If you want to learn more about this treatment system that was developed at The Ohio State University, we do monthly workshops at a local slaughterhouse, and brochures are on the table. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners O'Grady, Brooks, and Brown. As you're aware, Franklin County has done little to promote fresh food, local nutritious food programs in schools countywide, as cited by the most recent policy audit. County support is needed for these programs, however, which aim to educate children on healthy eating and offer them access to healthy food. While research has shown that school gardens and
farm-to-school programs are effective, no policy or program has been in place to support these programs in this county. Stakeholders in this issue certainly include children, but others who should take notice as well would be you, the Franklin County Board of Commissioners, schools, administrators, educators, food and nutrition professionals like OSU Extension, Local Matters, as well as community gardeners and local farmers. You may also be aware that research suggests that farm field trips increase students' knowledge of growing and consuming fruits and vegetables, and garden-based nutrition programs have the potential to promote increased fruit and vegetable intake as well, and increased willingness to try new fruits and vegetables. In Boston, the Metropolitan Area Council recommends the use of these programs to assist children in developing healthy eating habits. Likewise, in Wisconsin, Dane County Local Advisory Committee implemented a plan to offer countywide support. The City of Philadelphia and Mississauga County in Montana have taken this approach as well. I'm here because we too need to start taking matters into our own hands and to offer countywide support for programs which provide healthy food to children and adolescents in Franklin County. Thus, I propose to promote locally grown food in schools through assisting them with securing grant funding to cover schools and farm-to-school program startup costs, to develop surveys to gauge interest in and identify barriers to these programs, and to encourage schools to offer these programs. This is feasible, but it will involve even greater collaboration among community stakeholders to secure resources at local, state, and federal levels to support these changes I am proposing. You should be aware that not all Franklin County schools may be interested in adopting these programs. They may not be aware of the benefits, which is why I'm proposing to develop a survey to gauge interest and barriers related to this topic. As I also mentioned, even greater collaboration is needed among stakeholders, the stakeholders I mentioned earlier. And this will be necessary to involve, and it may involve time and dedication in this issue. Still, I have no doubts that this goal is realistic. We simply need to make healthy food and education a priority in Franklin County. In conclusion, while I am very grateful for your support of our local food council, I ask that you specifically address this issue by assisting schools in securing grant funding to cover startup costs for free-to-school projects and school gardens, to assist in developing surveys to gauge interest levels and in barriers to implementing school gardens and farm-to-school programs, and thus to encourage these programs in schools through maintaining support and holding regular meetings with stakeholders by the ending of 2014. Thank you.
Good morning to the Franklin County Commissioner's Office. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my policy brief. Today my policy recommendation is for Franklin County to invest in hoop houses and high tunnels for existing and novice farmers in Franklin County to support the local food economy now and for the future. The problem that I'm trying to address is that Ohio local produce is only available for 7 to 8 months out of the year, depending on the crop. Now, there's a high demand for these crops, such as berries. However, the inability for farmers to provide these crops to the market represents a lost opportunity, both to the farmers, the producers that are losing those wages and income, and to the producers that really genuinely want to eat more locally. Additionally, for the future side of this issue, climate volatility is a reality that we are all facing, and producers, particularly at the beginning and at the end of the growing season, are facing increases in climate volatility. That means cold snaps in the early spring and earlier and less predictable frosts in the late fall.
Hoop houses, finally, are capital intensive. Although they're low tech, they generally range between anywhere from $2,000 to $15,000 for startup cost. The solution that I'm proposing today is that Franklin County invest in hoop houses for local producers through two approaches. One approach would be to provide a loan program for Franklin County farmers who are already existing producers of local produce. That would be a loan program that would be on an application basis, repayable within 6 years. Second, I'm proposing a grant program that would specifically target young farmers to invest in the future of Franklin County, and that would have a requirement of age, of course, but also that they already have land that has been under cultivation for at least 1 year. I'm proposing that this be paid for through the Franklin County Economic Development and Planning Office, which from 2012 to 2013 had a budget increase of 57%. So I'm proposing that some of this this budget increase go towards providing support for our local food economy. This is a feasible solution because, first of all, the money is there. It's just a matter of whether or not Franklin County decides to invest in its future. These loans should pay back themselves. According to a Michigan State survey, in 2010, there was an average payback of 6 years on hoop houses that were $10,000. Now, $10,000 is just one option with hoop houses. We could be providing loans and grants for cheaper hoop houses if necessary. That would be sorted out in the application process. Politically speaking, local food is popular. Again, we're trying to address high demand for local food, and I think there's a growing awareness, especially here in Ohio, which is an agricultural state, that we need to invest in the next generation of young farmers if we want them to be there to continue to provide high quality produce and food in the future. Technically, again, hoop houses are very simple things that just exclude that don't require any that do not require electricity. On the one hand, there is an investment here, so that's a critique. But basically, what my ask here, as I'm running out of time, is that I'm requesting that Franklin County really invest in this program and put $1 million over the next 3 years towards this program, half of which would go towards the grants and half of which would go towards the loans. That's only 0.5% of the 2013 budget. Thank you for your time, and I can take a question.
Well, I'm going to start with the table back there. Peter.
How would you determine the viability of loan applicants, and what would the interest rate be?
Well, since this is a public loan, project, it would be a low interest rate. The idea is to encourage it. Mainly, the loan is to make it cost neutral to Franklin County. The criteria for existing producers would be that they would be, that they don't already have a hoop house. This would be a demonstrated need. That capital is somehow limiting for their adoption of this. That would be for the existing. And I think I outlined the younger producer criteria. Thank you for your time.
Office and the Columbus City Council for coming to listen to my policy pitch. What I'm discussing today is our hoop houses on the individual level. A quick thing on what hoop houses are, they're also called high tunnels. They're seasonal structures and they're covered with polyethylene. They modify the climate to create a more favorable conditions for growing vegetables and other plants, and they utilize solar heat, so they're pretty environmentally green. They can be. The problem I'm trying to address is that hoop houses are not defined by the zoning commission as buildings. They're kind of in this gray zone, and the reason is because they're defined as seasonal structures, and they don't really have a definition for what a hoop house really is. So it can be tedious to try to define or try to get the monies and the funds and to go through the bureaucracy to try to get them placed in the backyard, in the case which I'm talking about. The reason is because just specifically in Franklinton, food deserts, which we did a study on, is the insufficient access to nutritious food is quite prominent. And if anyone you've ever been to a store, you can see that nutritious food is either A, non-existent, or B, expensive and back in the corner where no one can find it. And it's going to help disadvantaged families help produce food. People who should care, I would say churches, Franklinton Gardens members, directors, neighbors, food banks, and soup kitchens. The reason is because this will help limit the burden of food. The food that they give out will help limit the burden of people coming into the soup kitchens and the food banks and all that. My proposed policy solution would be to define hoop houses as an agricultural structure that is used to grow food and allow it as a temporary structure. And it'll be allowed for a certain size. It should be allowed for a certain size. So you don't want it to be too obstructive to the view or take away from the neighborhood from which it's being placed in. I believe the proposal is realistic is because Franklinton Gardens already has a hoop house within a vacant lot, and they have shown that they can grow food all year round, and they do provide that food to soup gardens and churches and to their neighbors at practically free. There's a lot of critiques if this proposal was put forward. Some issues involved would be to change a person's attitude to actually go out and grow the food. You know how hard it can be to change people's minds, and to, if you're a single working mother or father and you have 3 kids, you want to go out in the backyard and try to labor through all that, and other issues would be unwanted guests, that is raccoons or rats or anything of that nature, and you'd have to perform maintenance on the hoop house, and then you would have to build it right, obviously, because you won't want it falling down on you. There's a big pile of snow on top, so that wouldn't be good either. So I'm asking you, Franklinton Zoning Office, I would like there to be a streamlined process to enable families in Franklinton Gardens to provide, to have hoop houses that would provide vegetables and fresh fruit all year long, and that'll help with the nutritious access in food deserts. Thank you.
St. Mary's Restoration Commission for allowing me to pitch my proposal for a sustainable solution to the continuing pollution of the lake. As you know, our position as an economic driver in rural Northwest Ohio, particularly Auglaize and Mercer counties, is huge. We're one of the main economic drivers in the region, and our status as the largest inland lake in the state has also contributed to the plight of the lake being so high profile and in the news so much. So as you know, in 2009, the Environmental Protection Agency detected unhealthy levels of cyanotoxins caused by cyanobacteria in the lake. And this is otherwise known as blue-green algae. And these algae are thriving in the lake due to the runoff of phosphorus from the farmland surrounding the region. The fertilizer used in the farmland surrounding the lake is heavy in phosphorus, and this is common in the industrial heavy agricultural inputs that we're seeing these days. And this is a problem because 90% of the land in the Grand Lake St. Mary's watershed is made up of agricultural, or is used for agricultural purposes. As such, the heavy use of these fertilizers has really polluted the lake with high levels of phosphorus, which the algae feed on. So this is exacerbated by the fact that the lake is on average 5 to 7 feet deep, and the silt at the bottom of the lake is heavy in phosphorus, so this gets kicked up and allows the algae to feed on it, further polluting the lake. So, as you know, this affects the citizens of the area of Salina and St. Mary's, which are on the shores of the lake. This affects the businesses of the area due to lost revenue. This affects the state, which has paid for some of the treatments of the lake, and it affects the EPA, which has also contributed a lot of money to the solution to this problem. The businesses in the region, due to the lake's status as a major tourism destination, it's included in the Grand Lake St. Mary's state park, which includes beaches, campgrounds, picnic areas, etc., has been estimated to lose about $75 million in revenue since these problems started. In addition, home prices in the area have been estimated to have depreciated by $25 million since this pollution began. So this has had a huge economic impact on the region. In addition, the health of the citizens of this area has been greatly impacted. At least 7 people have fallen ill due to the toxins in the lake. And the city of Salina actually uses the water from the lake for their public water system. So this also threatens the viability of the city of Salina's water system and could potentially harm people. So a number of quick fixes have been used on the lake, including alum treatments, which seek to neutralize the phosphorus in the water in order to kill the algae, and dredging the lake's phosphorus-rich silt, which I already talked about, gets kicked up and feeds algae. These are more stopgap measures that haven't been all that successful and don't go to the root of the problem of the fertilizer drain off and the phosphorus feeding into the lake. So in order to actually fix this problem at the source, I propose building on an already initiated solution of building wetlands around the lake to restore the almost 3,000 acres of wetlands which have been destroyed in the past century due to development. One wetland has already been established on the Prairie Creek feeder stream. It's a 200-acre wetland which was begun in the spring of 2012 and completed in June of 2013. It costs $990,000, which, if done on all of the feeder streams for the lake, would be less than the total that the alum treatments cost to treat the lake. In addition, since the wetland came into use in June, nitrogen levels going into the lake have decreased by an average of 41%, and phosphorus outputs have dropped by almost 3/4. So this is a sustainable solution, and it's been proven to actually work as it's been implemented, and we've already been looking at the amount of toxins going in the lake.
Good afternoon, Dublin City School district members. My name is James Chung, and I'll be talking about the relationship between school obesity and parents and school foods. Students who are attending schools have problem of obesity, not just Dublin City School, but this obesity is problem in all other schools in the United States. So in most part, parents are the first to care about students' obesity, and then it will be school districts who should be involved deeply so that there is no obesity for the students. There is a problem where schools are providing not enough nutritious healthy food, and almost 80% provide unhealthy food items during their lunchtime. Vending machines were presented in all elementaries, 17%, middle school 82%, and high schools 97%. And data has shown that food environment summary score was higher in lower grade levels than higher grade levels, because it's lower grade levels depend on their parents more than higher grade levels. Ohio Department of Health and Ohio Department of Education has proposed to educate schools regarding the USDA food guidelines. But I've asked my cousins and brothers and other members who's attending Dublin City School members about the food guidelines and everything, but they didn't know anything about it, and they prefer to pack lunch instead of eating in school because they're so unhealthy. And I've been to Dublin City Schools, and I would always pack lunch because they would always have pizza, maybe some salads, but it was too expensive to buy. So because of that, instead of just educating schools based on those guidelines, it would be better if they change the school foods that they provide. students will still eat no matter what because of what they like and what they want. So also educate students' parents so that when they're feeding their children at home, they can give out healthy food. And in this way, students will know what foods are healthy and unhealthy for them. So parents will be the most important role in this local policy solution. So not just giving their children money to buy lunch at school, but pack them healthy, nutritious food that doesn't go over their average calories. I think this proposal might help, somewhat helpful, because if school districts giving certain programs for students and their parents how to access to healthy food. Every school should prohibit unhealthy food if possible and change to organic food possible, or have more foods that have vegetables. Money might spend more for students, and there will be problem for low-income family to affording healthy lunch. It will not be the whole community that should be aware of with this solution, but it will be the whole community and each parent who should be aware of the solution. So in conclusion, it is necessary to have certain programs for especially parents in regular basis.
My name is Ivory Egan, and I'm an undergraduate student in the John Glenn School of Public Affairs, and I would like to talk to you about food waste as it relates to food access on our campus. In the past years, we've been working very hard as a university to come up with a solution for food waste and how we can convert it into sustainable energy. We have currently gone through a case study with the Blackwell, going over 3 potential options for a way to convert our waste into energy, and that resulted in a case study performed by Emerson in the incinerator that resulted in the findings that the most economic way to deal with our problem was to do a grind to energy solution, and to my knowledge we've converted that to most of our dining services. The one problem that I've found is that we are converting our waste, but what happens to that waste that's edible? Are we able to convert that into donations to local food pantries and food banks in our area to help combat with the current problems that may result from a reduction in SNAP benefits in the current conversations about the Farm Bill set to be completed in January? I propose that we reallocate our leftover food in the dining halls and come up with a way to transport it to local food banks, homeless shelters, and food pantries in the Franklin County area. We would not have to reinvent the wheel. This has already been a talked about solution on 33 different campuses across the country in the form of the Campus Kitchen Project. They have been able to create student involvement based off this, so not only would we be converting our waste into a positive solution, but we would be engaging our students in local community food access. I think it would create a lot of social capital at our university, as well as give students a purpose and a function in community food access and development. In terms of feasibility, it will take a lot of effort in the form of faculty involvement, staff involvement. Dining services will have to help us provide kitchen space and the ability for students to come in and help package that food as well as transport it. We are protected under the Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, which allows us to donate that food without any liability. This information was provided to me mostly by students that have been working in the dining services and have witnessed our food being pulped that is purely edible. And so I ask you to help us find a way to create these transportation options and packaging options for this leftover wasted food, so that we're not only just becoming a zero waste university in the form of creating energy through biodigesting, but we're also creating a zero waste university by helping with community food security in the Franklin County area.
Good afternoon, my name is Angela Latham, and I would like to thank the OSU Senior Director of Dining Services for allowing me to speak today. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, animal agriculture with its 70 billion land animals accounts for 14.5% of global human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. This confirms that the farm animal sector, due to its vast use of water, land, and fossil fuels, and high carbon dioxide and methane emissions, is a top contributor to climate change, one of the most pressing environmental problems of our time. The main sources of emissions are feed production and processing, followed closely by outputs during animal digestion and manure decomposition. The remainder is attributed to the processing and transportation of animal products. Additionally, livestock production is estimated to require 1,800 to 2,500 gallons of water for a single pound of beef and about 40 calories of fossil fuel energy for every calorie of feedlot beef in the U.S. The livestock production sector is a diverse group with globe-spanning activities that vary from country to country, meaning that emission reduction in this industry will require a mix of policies, incentives, and on-the-ground work. Considering that global meat consumption is expected to rise 40% by 2050, any effort to put the livestock industry on an alternative track will require a broad-based mutual effort from multiple stakeholders throughout the private, public, and nonprofit sector, through civic engagement, academia, and cooperation from international organizations. According to a 2008 study in the United States, if an average household shifted just 1 day per week's calories from a diet containing meat and dairy toward a vegetable-based diet, the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions would be equivalent to that household driving 8,100 fewer miles per year. As of autumn semester 2013, 63,964 students attend The Ohio State University. If every student elected to go meat-free 1 day a week, the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions would be equivalent to more than 200 million fewer miles driven per year. In the United States alone, more than 100 colleges and universities, 20 K-12 school districts, 20 public health institutions, and hundreds of restaurants across the country have elected to go meat-free 1 day a week in an effort to promote more sustainable food choices. Additionally, 23 nations across the globe promote meat-free menus 1 day a week to teach citizens about the environmental impact of their plates. With proper promotion through the university's website, social media outlets, and dining halls and events, this program would be technically feasible for OSU to implement as well. Seasons Cafe within the Wexner Medical Center is already featuring meat-free specials every Monday to promote a healthy body and planet. Furthermore, as meat prices are expected to continue to rise, reducing meat purchases by increasing meat-free fare 1 day a week can mean a significant cost savings to the university's dining operations budget. I am not suggesting that OSU should force students to adopt a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle, and I understand that dictating student meat consumption, even if only for 1 day a week, could spark backlash within the student body. However, it has been proven that more robust engagement is better at addressing apprehension than merely education alone. The proposed solution, therefore, is a way to get students more involved in the conversation about the environmental effects of and natural resources involved in raising, slaughtering, and processing animals for consumption. I ask OSU to officially implement Meatless Monday university-wide in the campus dining operations to demonstrate the university's commitment to sustainability and join the growing list of over 100 colleges and universities that are getting on board with this movement. By joining the Meatless Monday campaign and making one small change 1 day a week, OSU can advance further on the path to truly becoming scarlet, gray, and green.
Members of the Columbus Zoning Commission, my name is Hannah Scott. I'm a graduate student in rural sociology at The Ohio State University. I'm here to talk today about our food system's imbalance of healthy and unhealthy food outlets as a major health concern. This map of Columbus shows areas of the city with an imbalance between grocery stores and fast food restaurants. Those areas in red have the worst food balance ratio. This imbalance is problematic because research has shown that greater intake of fast food contributes to negative health outcomes like increased body mass index and higher rates of obesity, as well as lower intake of healthier foods like fruits and vegetables. Because the placement of fast food restaurants is disproportionately located in low-income minority neighborhoods, this problem is especially important for residents of those neighborhoods. Because of the negative health outcomes associated with healthy food imbalances, the public health sector of our city should be involved in efforts to correct the imbalance. In 2008, it was estimated that the medical cost of obesity in the United States was approximately $147 billion. between 8.5% and 12% of Medicare and Medicaid spending are related to obesity. So it's in the interest of all taxpayers and levels of government to create a healthier food environment that combats negative health outcomes. So today I propose that the City of Columbus adopt zoning regulations to reduce access to fast food restaurants in these areas in order to displace them with healthier alternatives. The city should rezone areas with high imbalances to prohibit fast food restaurants from entering those areas, while allowing supermarkets or other healthy food outlets to enter. These areas should also be rezoned using performance zoning to provide tax and other incentives for restaurants offering a greater percentage of healthy items. So this would entice already existing fast food restaurants that remain in these locations to offer more healthy food items. Zoning like this that prohibits fast food restaurants has already been adopted in cities like Los Angeles, Detroit, and Warner, New Hampshire. Alternative efforts to restore the imbalance of healthy and unhealthy food outlets include increasing the access to healthy and fresh foods by incentivizing the opening of new grocery stores, by implementing healthy corner store projects like the one currently operating in Franklinton, by controlling items that grocery stores must offer, and by implementing nutritional education programs to combat diet imbalances. However, all of these efforts can be extremely costly. The costs of opening new grocery stores and starting healthy corner store projects can range from $100,000 to millions of dollars. They're often very complex and time-consuming, and they require many people to implement as well as to maintain over the long term. So the zoning policies I'm recommending require very little financial investment. The technical requirements of these policies are also rather small because, as you can see, Columbus Public Health already has a food mapping project that identifies areas of the city with an imbalance between healthy food outlets and fast food restaurants. There are also already classification systems in place to identify what exactly a fast food restaurant is. So the political feasibility of this policy is probably the most difficult. It will likely be opposed by fast food corporations as well as proponents of individual responsibility when it comes to health and food choice. However, because the policy is in the interest of the public health, it's politically feasible. Policymakers and stakeholders should be aware that this effort alone will not drastically reduce obesity or increase access to healthy food, but it's an important start, especially when coupled with other efforts like healthy corner store projects. The greatest critique of this solution is likely to be that it could be legally challenged on the basis of constitutional rights. However, public health does provide a legitimate basis for zoning, and historically it's the strongest legal basis for zoning regulations. So today, I'm asking that the City of Columbus adopt new zoning regulations that prohibit new fast food restaurants in areas with an imbalance between healthy food outlets and unhealthy food outlets, while also incentivizing existing fast food restaurants to meet performance standards in which a greater proportion of their menu items are considered healthy. Any questions?
Good afternoon, Franklin County Commissioners. My name is Peter Neiswander. I'm a public affairs student at The Ohio State University. Farmers markets are one potential strategy for addressing food access in lower income areas. According to the Project for Public Spaces, the number of farmers markets has increased over 80% in the last 12 years, most of them in urban areas. Unfortunately, with food access comes the affordability issue. And while a growing number of markets possess the capacity to process EBT cards, the various methods for doing so are at best inconvenient and at worst non-existent. So I have an alternative solution. A little bit of background, the Clinton administration passed legislation in the 90s switching from food stamps to EBT cards. And in the mid-2000s, all 50 states were doing this. The pros of this arrangement are that it's easier to carry around a card and pay for things as opposed to using cash stamps. And it also ostensibly reduced fraud with people selling their stamps for cash to purchase other things. Unfortunately, what this has done is limit the ability for non-brick and mortar vendors to accept EBT cards. Electricity, phone line restrictions at farmers market make it difficult to do so. So there's been two common solutions to this problem. First is you go to a farmer's market, you pick out your food, you get your receipt from the vendor without paying for anything, you go to the EBT machine, you pay for your food, you get the receipt, you go back to the vendor's stall, and you get your food. That's terrible. There's a second solution that's a little bit better. Having a centralized EBT station, and you purchase wooden tokens or scripts, which you then use to pay at the different stalls. The issues with the wooden tokens are that they're not refundable, and if you purchase, you can only purchase certain amounts, so that if you don't have enough money for the rest of the week with your food stamps, you can't spend the tokens on anything else. The tokens are only good at the farmer's market. So my solution is technology. Smartphones. Everyone has a smartphone. Franklin County should issue a request for proposals to develop an app that will be targeted towards vendors at farmers markets. This app could be used to take EBT payments on individual vendor smartphones, and the infrastructure for this already exists. It's the same type of payment structure that credit cards use, so all it would be required is for a local developer to create a front end of an app with a PIN pad, because that's also required for EBT transfers, so that vendors at farmers markets could take the payments. Also, this way, if you decentralize the system away from one central EBT machine, vendors are freer to go to different farmers markets or go to different places, or even to sell from their own locations at their farms or what have you to people with food stamps. There are some issues with this problem. The process for becoming a vendor to take EBT cards is somewhat burdensome, and for a farmer who perhaps is only producing one type of crop, they would not meet a lot of the requirements that SNAP vendors have to meet. So Franklin County could solve this problem by creating an umbrella organization that took into account all the different vendors and all their different products that they sold, and make it easier for people to apply by basically being in a coalition with other food vendors. The other problem is that not everyone has a smartphone. I think this is becoming less and less of a problem, but if the investment were made into this system and vendors saw that they would be making more money by being able to take EBT cards, then I think that a smartphone or a tablet would become a reasonable business investment. So this may seem like a modest proposal compared to some of the other ones that were made today, but I think that it's a small investment that Franklin County could make to increase food access for many people in underserved areas.